Talk radio will actually educate, inspire, and make you think. The future.
Hey, I got to grab my microphone. Greetings and salutations, everyone. Welcome to Dr. Judy WTF. I am your host, Walt Lusk, and in studio we have Dr. Judy Rosenberg, and we have a very, very interesting and special show today. You know, Judy and I were chatting earlier this week, and we realized that we have been together on the air for almost 12 months. Actually, that's a year. And we're trying to try something today that we've never done before. But before we get to that, it's going to be a call-in show, but we have a caller coming in. We got a mystery guest. Her name is Maria. And later in the show, we're going to do as usual. We're going to shrink a tune. And you can reach us at info@DrJudyWTF. If you have requests for a show topic later this month or a show you want to shrink. And we're going to put the mind map through its amazing paces. Judy's going to elaborate a little bit on the mind map, but we're going to have a guest on, and she is actually going to be on the next 3 weeks a guest, and we're going to go through the whole mind map system with somebody, and that way maybe somebody might call in and want to be advantageous of the mind map with Dr. Judy on the couch as well.
Well, thank you, Walt,
Judy,
for
how you
that.
doing?
I'm doing great. You feel so far away. Speaking of connection, our furniture has been
making
rearranged
some changes in the
here.
studio. I'm in the North 40 and she's in the South 40.
Yes,
but, you can't tell.
yes. I want to recap a little bit on what we've been up to in the last many weeks. We have been outlining the mind map as a system to heal human disconnect, and we've gone from the wound of childhood through the reaction and the encoding into our negative core belief. And then we've morphed out of that and started unwinding these negative core beliefs, only to find that when we have these breakdowns, we create a lot of chaos and defenses, and ultimately a clash in the isms and a clash in the entire system that was originally not so sustainable in the first place. So just a little bit about the mind map. The mind map was created back in 2001 as a global unity project to heal human disconnect. And as you know, many of us are so feeling it. We're feeling the Israel-Arab conflict. We're feeling all the conflicts all over the globe. And it has been a real nightmare to turn on the radio. And
it has been an amazing nightmare. And I wanted to say, Judy has written a book which kind of addresses the nightmare in a sense. It's called Lucid Darkness, and you can find it on Amazon right now on Kindle. And it addresses some of the challenges that are going on right now in the Middle East. So if you want a great summer read, it's a pretty fast read. It'll really give you a little bit of an insight to Judy and the mind map, even though she's not mentioned specifically. And what's going on in the Middle East.
And although the character is actually me in the book, so I live through character, and the purpose of the book is to create a mind map to heal human disconnect, and it actually takes place in Gaza City. So every time I turn on the news, I'm thinking, my goodness, if only I could be there and do something of value to heal global disconnect. Wouldn't that be something amazing? So that's at a later chapter, but for right now we are working on healing human disconnect, because that's where everything starts, and that's where we have to really put our energy, is to make sure that are we having technical difficulties?
No, we're
Is
doing
everything
the cameras
okay?
are great. We're just trying
Cameras
to
are great?
We're trying to make you look better.
Make me look better.
Even though you look fabulous.
I'm always game for looking better.
Well,
If you
yeah,
want to make me
just-
look better.
I'm the one that needs to look better.
Well, we all like to look better. The narcissistic wounds of childhood necessitate the desire to always look better, and we're going to get into that.
We are
because,
definitely going to
yeah,
dive into that
definitely
one.
going to dive into
And
that one.
We've got in about 3 weeks or so, we're going to definitely dive into that, and probably for 2 shows. We've got enough information. So if you think you kind of sort of might have a narcissistic mom or a narcissistic dad, stay tuned.
Yes, that will be a continuous theme. And in the meantime, just to catch everybody up, the mind map is a matrix. That's why we use the theme song, The Matrix. The show is called What the Freud, and
Yes,
the reason
that's Dr. Judy WTF, What the Freud.
Yes, and the reason we choose that theme is because we repeat patterns that ultimately harm us, and unless we are able to take the patterns and unravel them and create new blueprints for successful life, successful relationship with ourselves and others, then we are doomed to repeat. So we're going to have an ability today to, for the first time, take apart dissect the wounds of childhood and the reactions to those wounds and the encoding of those wounds. It's going to be really interesting because we have Maria that will be calling in shortly.
Yes.
And just please understand, everyone, this is not treatment. This is so that I can actually demonstrate and you can get a sense of the work that's done, the area that we really concentrate and focus on so that we can get at the wound, which is the disconnect. And just to remind everyone, what makes a healthy human psyche? Here we go again.
Oh my gosh,
Okay.
I wish I knew.
Yeah, well, I wish we all had it. We need touch. We need eye contact. We need to hear the heartbeat. Ideally, we all benefit from breastfeeding. Most importantly, what we need is attunement to our primary caregivers. And by attunement, I mean that mother, father, and whoever is the primary caregiver has to be consistently there. And there's no substitution for time spent with your child. So parents, please know that the most important ingredient you can give your children is not the formula, not the Nintendo game, not the cell phone or any
Absolutely
special
not.
toy. The most important human mental health formula you can give your child is you and your undivided attention, connection, and attunement.
As we talked about last week, children spell love Time. Time.
Right. And I'm not talking about just quantity time, because a lot of people think, I'm just quality time, excuse me. People think, I'm just going to give my kids 1 day a week quality time. I mean, come on. What's that? I see, you know what that is? That's called Dr. Judy's or somebody's future patient. That's what that's called. Okay, that means that that person is going to grow up thinking that they're not that important, they're not that special. They're not number one.
And we have a special person calling.
Oh, okay, fabulous.
So, good evening, and thanks for calling the Dr. Judy What the Freud Show.
Hello?
Hi.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Is this Maria?
Yes, it is.
Hi. Thank you so
I
much.
wasn't sure if this was the right time.
Your,
A few minutes early.
your timing is impeccable.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So first of all, I really appreciate how you're volunteering up to go through the process of identifying the wounds of childhood and the reaction to these wounds. And Maria, just know that these reactions to the wounds are pre-verbal. Okay, they're not verbal. It's not like I can interview and say, oh, so what happened when you were 2 months old, or what happened when you were 8 months old? It doesn't work that way. So the first thing that I want to ask you is just tell me a little bit about what your symptoms are. And I play psychological detective and work backwards. So audience, please listen carefully, because the symptoms are going to tell us what the wound is. So go ahead and give me a list of what you're suffering from today in the here and now.
I know
Okay.
I know that's more than a
I'll
mouthful.
try not to go into story here.
Okay. Just maybe,
Basically,
yes.
okay, you were going to ask me something.
Yeah, and maybe because we have a limited amount of time to work with, of course. Just kind of tell me a little bit about whether you're anxious or depressed, or if you suffer from obsessive compulsive, or if you have
Okay.
any habits or
So what's the
addictions.
symptom?
Thank you very much. What are your symptoms?
Okay. At the moment, I feel stuck.
Okay.
I feel like I've done a lot of work in the past.
Okay.
And I feel a lot of shame around where I'm at,
Okay.
just because I've done so much work and have really explored so many different things.
Okay. Okay.
And at the moment, I feel pretty raw. So.
Pretty raw.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, I really do appreciate your vulnerability, because one of the things that I learned and am learning and always learning is that healing takes place in the primitive emotional brain. And that in order to get to the primitive brain, sometimes we have to start with our logic, because unless you trust the system, unless you trust the structure of what we're doing, then the primitive brain, the emotional brain, will not let down its guard, because that's what we're busy defending. And when we have symptoms, I'll give you an example, like symptoms like drug abuse or overeating or gambling or some such symptoms, then what we're doing is we're really surrounding the wound with these defense mechanisms, and we're protecting ourselves from feeling the raw. Okay, so if you're feeling raw, that just tells us that there's an opening into your emotional world, and that truly is the pathway to healing.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I appreciate that. Anything else? Can you speak a little bit about anxiety and depression? Because those are common.
I have had a lot of anxiety in my life. I've done a lot of work around it.
Okay.
Various things. I don't feel as anxious anymore as I have in the past.
Okay.
But I think what happens is I cycle through a series of, a lot of things have happened in my life in the last 5 years.
Okay.
I'm getting a divorce of
Okay.
a 20-year marriage, and I feel like in this course of time, over the last 5 years, I've been regressing
Okay.
emotionally.
Okay. So I'm going to call these pressures, if you will, and I'll just use the divorce as a huge pressure, stressor. We call them psychosocial stressors, meaning they stress out our psychology, and they're built around social events. Of course, divorce is a very personal event, and divorce is one of those things that just set off the Richter scale. It's a huge trigger, and if you have an ounce of abandonment issues within, then the divorce is absolutely.
That's all it takes.
That's right.
I've also moved 6 times in 5 years.
Wow.
Oh my
Okay.
goodness.
I've also feel a tremendous amount of pressure financially.
Okay.
I find that I am very angry and frustrated
Okay.
around why I haven't been able to suddenly bounce back and find a new career and support myself. So I would say my biggest symptom is anger
Okay.
and how I have moved it around in my life.
Okay. So we're going to go into the dissection of the wound in a little, but I want to just kind of generally tell you what I'm hearing here, and maybe I should do this first. Okay. I'm going to ask you a few key questions so that you can really highlight and help understand where the disconnects occurred in the first few years of life. And of course, this is based on what you've heard and based on what you may have been told by your parents. And what I'm looking for specifically, Maria, is the mother-infant disconnect, because where we're disconnected from leaves us with emotional scar, and that emotional scar allows for I call them psychoviruses, if you will, to come into the wound and start defining who we are. So the first question I want to ask you is, were you born on time?
I don't know. I think so, yes.
In other words, were you a preemie?
No, I was not a preemie.
Okay, so you were not a preemie. Okay.
Not as far as I know.
Okay. Were you breastfed?
My mother said yes, but I think it was more feeding me with the breast milk through a bottle.
Okay, fed through bottle. Was that sort of the style, if you will,
He
for
said
the
I
day?
was breastfed.
I'm sorry. Say that again.
Said I was breastfed.
From the breast or the bottle?
But I seem to think it was from the bottle.
And what makes you think that?
Because when I was very little, I looked at pictures and I was being held with a bottle.
Okay.
Aha.
Okay.
And I was just born, so I must have been fed with a bottle.
Okay.
Aha.
Gotcha. Interesting. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to ask you was your mother, your primary caregiver in the first few months and maybe 2-3 years of life. And by that I mean, did she do the daily care, the feeding, the bathing, the soothing, or were you handed over to nanny, child care provider, family member, any such person?
No, she did everything. She was basically
Okay, so she was primary, yes?
primary, yes.
Okay. The next question I have, was there any separation from your mother during the first few years of life, meaning that she or you had to go to hospital, or was she sent away for any emergency reason or anything like this that you know of?
That I'm aware of, no.
Yeah, no. Okay.
A little bit later, when I was 4, I was sent away for a month.
At 4, you were sent away for 1 month? Why?
Because my mother left to come. I was born in Europe, and she came to America to assess moving here. I was supposed to stay in this children's home for 3 months, actually, but she came back early.
Okay. And who took care of you?
Nuns.
A nun?
It was in a home. It's a children's sanatorium.
A children's home. Okay, so just now going back into, where was your father?
My father was gone a lot.
Okay, was he working?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so being that your father was gone a lot, do you think that your father was able to be of emotional support to your mother at the time that you were an infant? Pardon me?
Not at all.
Not at all. Okay. Do you think that perhaps your mother suffered from any anxiety or depression as a result of your father being gone, as a result of perhaps whatever stressors were stressing her?
I think my parents' relationship was very unstable, and
Okay.
I think my mother was emotionally unstable
In what way?
to begin with, living through the Second World War,
Okay.
and
All right.
both of them, actually.
Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to take the information that you gave me because, Maria, do you see how many disconnects you've now spoken about?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
There
yeah.
are more than I've mentioned.
Okay, and just because of brevity and again, I just want to use these examples so that you can begin to digest, just so that you can understand the wounding here that that you incurred. And I just want to go through this so that people who are listening in can understand the severity of this. Not one item on the list is severe enough to really put somebody over the edge emotionally, but certainly when you have a conglomeration of disconnects, it can really create a lot of instability of mood, and
it can sure add up.
it sure adds up quickly.
Yeah,
So
it sure can.
So let's just go through the disconnects. Okay, so bottle feeding, connect or disconnect?
Disconnect.
Okay.
Doesn't have to be, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because a lot of times I've seen women or parents prop the bottle up and actually put a pillow under. So it's absolutely more connecting to be breastfed, right? And it's a matter, look at it on a continuum. To put breast milk in a bottle is better than to not put breast milk in a bottle. To hold the baby and feed the baby is better than to have a pillow propping up the bottle. So can you see the different degrees that we're speaking of? But in general, it's a bit of a disconnect, isn't it?
Well, given my history, I think because my mother was left alone a lot with me, I think it was hard for her to really be present.
Okay. And I think the primary disconnects that, let's see if we see the same thing. I'll keep going through what you told me. That your mother had no support from your father. He was gone a lot. And that she was coming out of a huge stressor. I mean, what could be more stressful than World War II in Eastern Europe? I can't think of anything more stressful than that. And obviously that was going to impact her mood and everybody's mood and make just about everybody quite unstable. You hear some more disconnects here.
Do I hear more disconnect?
Yes, as I'm reading it back to you, can you hear the severity of the disconnects? Okay.
Yes.
So can you see that in order for a mother to really nourish and nurture her child, she needs to be nurtured and nourished herself? It's very important. I've brought this point up several times on our show.
On previous shows.
Right, that's right. And Walt, you and I have talked about it several times that the nurturer has to be nurtured. Right, and being
neither one of my parents were nurtured.
Neither one were nurtured.
Nurtured or nurturing?
Neither of them were nurtured.
Nurtured. Okay, so good point.
That's a very good observation.
Yes, because we're talking about the multi-generational transmission process. So this is a hand-me-down of pathology, and unfortunately, when our parents are not healed, they pass it down to you. So let's just construct this thing. So we've got the wound of childhood. The most wounding that I can see here is that your father was gone. Your mother and your father were probably traumatized from the war, and God knows what happened to them on the side of their parents and their grandparents and so on. And then on top of it all, at 4 years old, your mother leaves you at 4 years old for how long?
A month.
But it was because my father left before. My father was always leaving.
Okay, so now when you say it was because my father was always leaving, what did you mean by that?
At that point, I think she wanted to leave the marriage.
Okay. So your mother probably was feeling...
She was predicting something coming down the road, and she was protecting herself. But yes, she left me in the sanatorium for a month.
Okay,
but when you were in the sanatorium, you didn't have your mother nor your father, right?
I'm sorry?
You didn't have your mother or your father, right?
No.
Okay.
So there was no contact. No contact and no cell phones at the time and no way to read her letters and no way to nothing. So there was a huge disconnect. And, this is where I find so many of my patients get stuck, is that they understand that it's not mom's fault or dad's fault. And yet, and I really want to make this perfectly clear, that the infant or the child doesn't care whose fault it is. It still suffers the suffer. Either way, there's going to be a suffering here. And just because mom says, honey, I had to leave you for a month because the truth of the matter is dad and I were not getting along and I was getting kind of scared and I wanted to carve out a new life for us. It doesn't matter because a 4-year-old needs mom and needs dad. And a 4-year-old who's disconnected from mom primary caregiver and dad's secondary caregiver for 1 month is way too long.
It's a long time.
Way too long. So does it make sense to you that your initial symptoms, which you've worked quite a bit on, are anxiety? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm thinking that your style of attachment, and I talk about this quite a bit, John Bowlby, father of attachment theory, is that there may have been an attachment break here that you're suffering from, and it may have been an anxious attachment here because there was, well, actually you had a lot of secure base, but remember, your mother may not have been emotionally available. So now here you are as an infant with parents that have just come out of the war. And so let's move to panel 2 because we've now identified the wounds of panel 1. And Walt, if you can put the panels up there and talk about maybe put the panels up there.
Those of you that are listening, you can go to www.drjudywtf.com and see the panel. And by the way, you are listening to drjudywtf.com. And we have a very, very special guest here, Maria, who has been gracious and amazingly kind to spend some time with Dr. Judy so we can really see and experience firsthand, with all of us listening, the mind map in action. And it's amazing.
You know, it's an amazing work, and it's amazing to play psychological detective, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I'm not playing here. I'm really doing some connecting of the dots here with you, Maria, and I just want to go through the mind map, panel 1, the wound of childhood in her case, the questionable bottle breastfeeding, being that her mother was not nurtured by her husband, and it seems like the whole marriage was unstable, and there was a society that was unstable and bloodily unstable, you know, to say the least. And then mother and father were not getting along, so clearly she was not getting the nurturing that she needed with
a lot of instability.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So she didn't have to give to you, and then there was this major trauma, and I'm not underestimating the trauma of a 4-year-old, even though we talk about how it's so important to have the first 3 years of life laid down correctly. A 4-year-old without mom and dad for 1 month in a strange environment. Wow.
Well,
that's big.
She also didn't have dad a lot anyway.
I'm sorry?
She didn't have dad around a lot anyway. Dad was gone a lot.
No.
Right?
No. Okay, so now here you are at age whatever, first few years of life. And so what do you think a baby's primitive reaction is to not having a mother who's emotionally available, not having a stable environment, not having a stable societal environment, not having safety, basic safety? I mean, who knows? Who knows if the environment is even safe? A kind of an air of paranoia coming out of World War II would only leave people feeling dazed, confused, paranoid, anxious, depressed, all of the above. So what do you think the baby within you might have been feeling at your early infancy?
I think that I experienced a lot of stress.
Mm-hmm.
I was a very happy child, but I think I felt a lot of pain.
Okay.
I was very aware of what was going on in my environment,
Mm-hmm.
and it was very toxic.
Very toxic. Okay, so
that's amazing.
Yeah, literally toxic, within and without. So we talk about the double dungeon, which is the motherly support, and then the outside world, which is the father's support. And now we almost have a triple dungeon effect here. We've got mother compromised, we've got father compromised, and then the world at large is so toxic that this is just over the top darkness. And so it's amazing. You must have a lot of gifts and a lot of light, which we will get to in the next, after we get through the middle of our work together and process together of dismantling the core belief that landed within you and we will get to your light. And obviously you have a lot of light and a lot of talent. And right now I'm focusing on the darkness because we want to really shine the truth light on the darkness so it won't be so dark, and reveal what is it that sits in you, that's poisoning you, that's hurting you, that's had you disconnected all these years. And so you can see quite clearly that the baby was not really able to do well with an emotionally absent mother and father and poisonous environment and a lot of stress, and then put in a home for children run by nurses. I mean, this you could see created major reactions to the wound of disconnect. So one of the things that really pops off my sheet of paper and pops into my head is that you really, really had to regulate yourself. So, one of the things that you're talking about in general is how angry you are, and how that's your current state, and how much responsibility you have, and you've moved 6 times, and you're going through divorce, which I'm assuming means that you don't have a lot of emotional support from a man right now. Am I assuming that correctly?
Well, not in that regard, yes.
Not in that regard. Am I assuming it correctly, or do you have a good support system by your side?
I have always created my own support system.
Okay.
I don't want to jump ahead here, so
Okay, fair enough.
Well,
I'm just following your lead.
Thank you. Okay.
I wanted to just reiterate, at age 4, you actually left Europe and came to the United States. Is that correct?
No, I did not come to the United States until I was 7.
Oh, my goodness.
A lot of things happened in between.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay. So what
Let's just say the first 5 years were highly unstable and not very supportive or nurturing.
Okay.
So I learned at a very early age to depend on myself.
That's exactly where I was going with all of this.
Yes,
okay.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what, like where I wanted to meet you in that space of, wow, look at all the burden you had on yourself. And now, even as an adult, that you've done all this work alone, right? You've supported yourself in so many ways alone. You didn't have anybody to really help soothe you and give you, and I know I'm assuming some things, and I'm sure you'll fill in some of the gaps, but it just strikes me that you're so angry and ashamed of yourself for not being able to have done it alone.
I think that's not 100% accurate.
Okay, correct me on that.
That I see, looking back and given my own body of work, that I internalized a lot of things, and I have healed a lot of things,
yes,
but I feel stuck still and feel that somewhere along the way I left myself out of the equation. Somewhere along the way I made other people more important than myself.
Okay, and that is a theme that Alice Miller talks about a lot in her book, Trauma of a Gifted Child. I think it's Drama or Trauma of a Gifted Child.
Drama.
Thank you.
Drama. It is drama.
Thank you. And you understand the theme.
You've done your homework.
Yes, you have. Yeah, so you understand that a child is a child who then becomes a parentified child and takes care of adults doesn't get a childhood. You do understand this on more levels than on many levels. Right. So what happens in the core of a person's being when they're not nourished and nurtured, and when they don't have strong adults around them to do the job of soothing them and directing them and really putting together a structure for them, is that this becomes a sense of a kind of like an overburdening and an over responsibility within the child, and they become the parentified child, which then means that they don't get to have the sense of safety and play that we need so desperately and so importantly to develop our creativity, to develop our sense of comfort in the world, and so on. And we're going to get into that because I know that you have many, many talents, and you have obviously done a lot of work to remove a lot of the darkness that has been shadowing over you, so that you can access your creativity and your intelligence and your talents and so on. And it's only through your work and your processing through some of this that you were able to access this. And so one of the things that happens out of this, nevertheless, even though you have worked so hard, is this core belief. We're now on panel 3, okay? If you look at panel 3 is a DNA strand, and this DNA strand is a metaphor for what you've encoded into the fiber of your being based on the first few years of life. So if you mix the ingredients that we talked about, mother who had to leave for 1 month, baby who was bottle fed with breast milk, that's probably lower on the totem pole than some of the other disconnects that you've mentioned, an unstable emotional world that you grew up in, an unstable environment that you grew up in.
An absent father.
An absent father. What lands in your psychological encoding, so to speak, is a core belief, and it's not that positive, and it was woven out of the fiber of what got blueprinted in. Okay, so we're going to work on this some more, but core beliefs are, let me give you examples of core beliefs. Core beliefs could be something like, I'm not important, I'm not lovable, I'm not number one,
I'm not worthy.
I'm not worthy.
I'm not pretty enough.
Yes. So if you were to take a guess at what through all this experience, how did all of these experiences with your mother and your father land within the fiber of your being? If you were to take a guess at that, what would you guess your core belief to be?
I think the one that resonates the most is that I'm not important enough.
I'm not important enough. I'm writing that down because we're going to work off of that. Not important enough. Does that make sense to you, that given what you experienced, that you would encode that?
Yeah.
Okay. So, is it clear to your logic? I'm going to appeal to your logical mind, because clearly the core belief that I'm not important enough is an emotional encoding, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So is it clear to your logical mind that this encoding was ingested by you from information that you digested from the way that you were treated by your primary caregivers?
Yes.
Okay, very clear, right? I mean, you definitely you were not born in the world with this kind of like a stamp on your forehead saying, hey, Maria, you're just not important enough. Sorry, you got unlucky. You're just one of those kids that are not that important.
Yeah,
you can
absolutely.
really see, now that we've traced this entire process, you can
There's another caveat to that, though.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up feeling that I didn't have it as bad as some people had it.
Survivor's guilt?
So
A little?
I did that also. Well, I didn't really have it that bad. Who really grew up with a perfect childhood?
Right.
Who really was nurtured and doted on? I mean, some of these things are very, if you look at the third world and you look at a lot of places,
Okay.
It's a luxury to think about these things.
That's an amazing statement, and I was born in Eastern Europe, and I come from child of that era as well, so I really understand that statement, and we're really close to out of time. Yes, Walt?
You got about 7 minutes.
Oh, okay, great, okay.
The whole 7 minutes.
Yay!
As I like to say, the clock is a tyrant.
Yeah.
But we will
I
have
love
you.
that.
But we will have you back next week, and stay tuned for more.
So I just want to bring up this point of, like, oh, all right, given what everybody else got, I mean, we're talking about gas chambers, we're talking about torture, we're talking about, I mean, beyond. Okay, so aren't you just a lucky one that you only had a mother who left for a month, that your father and mother only went through a divorce, that you only had emotionally unstable parents that couldn't really nurture? Aren't you the luckier one? Okay, now, Maria, is that really supposed to make it better?
No.
No, that's like saying, it's not that bad. Children in Africa are starving. So why are you complaining? You're just a homeless child. There's food in the garbage can. Okay? It's just like, what? This is a feast compared to India or, some third world country. So, is that really supposed to make it better? So it's amazing for me as a psychologist to hear how people process it and how they've been taught to process it
And justify.
And justify it and discount the pain
discount.
and discount the effect on the human psyche. And so in this particular treatment that I do, I don't discount. And even though we logically know it's not our parents' fault and we can logically see that maybe they did do the best that they could, do you know what? Babies don't really care for the reasons why. They don't, because babies are self-centered in a good way, because they're supposed to sponge in the information. They're supposed to be available to take in the world and trust the world. And if mom and dad fail them in any way, whether it's on purpose or not, it kind of doesn't really make a difference in terms of the effects and on the blueprint of the first few years of life.
Right.
Okay.
Right. The conditioning doesn't change.
It doesn't. No, it doesn't change. And then what people are left with, and for those of you listening, you can see that even though it wasn't Maria's fault that her mom was unable to be there for her and her father was not available and her parents did not have a stable relationship. And if you look at the panel 3, you can see the DNA strand. And if you look carefully at it, I want to use it as a metaphor so that you can understand that your mother, let's say that she's represented by the pink strand of the DNA, okay? Mm-hmm. And your father, represented by the blue strand of the DNA, are supposed to be this beautiful dance between a male-female energy, and they're supposed to hold a good enough environment for the baby to grow on, and those would be the ladders of the DNA that are supposed to be your structure, your foundation, based on the pillars of who your parents are and the strength of what they're giving you. And in this case, neither your parents had strength nor did the environment have safety, and so therefore, and we are going to get into this in the next discussion, do you see what happens to panel number 3 when the structure isn't sound, you don't have stable parents to really hold you and nourish you and give you the safety to grow? Do you see what happens to panel 3? You tell me, what happens to panel 3?
It unravels.
It unravels. It falls apart.
Absolutely.
Okay, and we're going to stop right there because I want to just present to you the wound, the reaction to the wound, and this encoding that Maria encoded based on it, on these first few years of life. And this encoding or negative core belief is I'm not important enough. So, Maria, thank you so much, and please join.
Maria, thank you.
My extreme pleasure. And please join us back here next week, and we will continue the mind map journey through the process of unraveling this negative core belief, which I call the psychological virus.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Well, thank you, Maria. You take care, and God bless until we see you again and hear from you next week, okay?
Okay. Thank you.
So much.
Good night.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Wow. Folks, what you just experienced is not only Dr. Judy in real time. She hasn't spent a lot of time with Maria, have you?
No.
No, And so she covered 3 panels of the 9 panels of the mind map, and it was funny. She goes to a symposium. I know she's not going to say this, but I'm gonna brag on her a little bit here. On Thursdays at UCLA with a lot of her contemporaries, and Judy just did in 45 minutes what some
My
don't do in
colleagues
2
are going
years.
to kill me.
What others aren't able to do in 2 years.
And, with all due respect to my colleagues, I'm learning a great
I know you
deal.
are.
And in truth, I am frustrated with the amount of time therapy takes. And one of the reasons that I think that I make big progress quickly is because I invite people to be bold. I'm bold.
Well, you're bold.
I'm bold. I invite them to be bold. I make it really safe in the room to say anything. And it's the say anything part, including things that are hush-hush, taboo, which we're going to get into in the next level of from the problem through the process. And we're going to process out the poison. And a lot of people in our profession, my profession, avoid the actual cause of the wound, which is always
they dance
mother
around it a lot.
They
but
do.
They never address it and are bold enough or secure enough in themselves to pinpoint it and really hit it on.
Right. So we're going to go into that kind of work, and I'm just reminding everyone that this is not a blame and shame
No, it's not.
and really throw mother under the bus
No,
system.
it's not.
However, it is really, really important for us to heal, to be able to exorcise, if you will, the psychological poisons of childhood that have emotionally blocked our light. And if we don't exorcise these poisons, then we're really stuck with the symptoms, and we're stuck. Just like what Maria said, I'm stuck. I'm stuck, and I'm ashamed.
Yep.
And I've worked on my anxiety, but I'm so ashamed that I haven't been able to really fix myself.
Well, she's been self-sufficient from a very, very early age, and so from that perspective,
right.
I would imagine she thinks that as a result, she should be able to, doctor cure yourself.
Yeah, she should be able to do this, and she should be able to do that, and she should be able to appreciate everything that happened to her because it wasn't as bad as everybody else's life.
And all she's doing is shitting on herself.
That's right.
That's SHOULDING, folks.
Thank you, Walt.
You're welcome.
Keep it clean.
Absolutely. And so stay tuned next week. You can experience more Dr. Judy in action with the mind map. We're going to try and go through we whizzed breezily through the first 3 panels of the mind map, and we'll hopefully shoot for doing 3 more next week.
Yeah, we've gone through the creation of the problem, which is the from part, and we're going through the through part of the dismantling of the problem next week.
And so next brings us to almost the highlight of our show is the Shrink That Tune. And this week we have a song written by and performed by Pink, and it's called Disconnected. So
what a great title for what we're talking about today.
Some of the chorus is actually pretty amazing too, I think.
Yeah.
So turn up the thermostat. It's only 50 damn degrees. Everybody's so warm and I'm so cold. So now can you believe that? She's got 17 tattoos, and she sings about the blues, and she's suburban.
Okay, so we're talking about emotional thermostat here. I'm shrinking it through the lens of the mind map and what we talked about, the context of creation of the wound. So here is a reference to the thermostat. It's 50 degrees, meaning it's internally cold, and this individual cannot regulate herself because she hasn't had a parent, a primary caregiver, that's been able to regulate her affects. So she is cold. She's also got 17 tattoos. So she's doing something on her skin to give her the skin to skin.
Yes, she is.
She is. Yes.
Everybody is so obsessed with everybody else. I don't know. I didn't know that, and so broke up. I was busy paying bills. I don't always think I'm right, but I know I'm wronged.
Okay, so everyone is so obsessed with everyone else, and who doesn't get the attention? The me inside. So everyone's outward, but who's needing the attention is the writer of the song.
Absolutely.
So she needs to be attended to. And so because of this focus outward and not on her. She's all broken up, and now she's having to be the adult and paying bills, right?
Yeah,
Which is very similar to what
to be
Maria was
responsible.
talking about. I don't always think I'm right, but I know I'm wronged, meaning this is all messed up here. This energy shouldn't be flowing this way. I shouldn't be taking care of myself. I should be having my primary caregivers.
What is wrong with this picture?
Yeah, what's wrong with this picture? Exactly.
And the chorus, I'm trying so hard to get through. I'm trying so hard to hear you. There's so much static on the line that I can barely hear the truth. Is it any wonder I'm the fool? Is it a surprise to be uncool? It's no wonder I'm so disconnected.
Yes, and here's the intimacy issue.
Yeah.
Here's the desire to get close, right? I'm trying to get through. I want to hear you. I want to connect to you, but there's static on the line because there's a there's a problem with receiving, okay? Because the giver's not giving, so the receiver's not receiving, and she can't hear the truth. And I take the truth to mean the truth is also, in my mind, the way I see it, is a representation of what do we truly need, Walt? What do we truly need?
Unconditional love.
That's right. So is there any wonder I'm the fool? Because I can't hear the truth. So there goes the core belief. What's wrong with me? Is it a surprise to be uncool? What's wrong with me?
Yeah. She's kind of shooting on herself. So tell me why you got to laugh. I guess I must have missed the joke. The over-caffeinated bologna that got me tired. I guess you know just where it's at. You got to have the latest things. Keep your friends impressed another minute longer.
Well, here she's got to hang on to her friendships because she's feeling disconnected from, and she also has to find defense mechanisms against it all. So, so she tries the over-caffeinated bowl, right? And
yes.
that doesn't really work. Just got her tired, and then she tried the latest things, and the things didn't really work, and what she deeply desired was the connection.
Human connection.
Correct.
And a hole in the
human
soul,
connection.
and stuff isn't going to fill it up.
Right.
I can only imagine how uncomfortable it is inside that skin, having to stretch and mold to society.
Yes, there's the wound.
Yeah.
Right.
And trouble fitting in. Do you always think you're right, but you know you're wrong?
Well, the skin thing is a big deal because that, again, goes back to the womb and the wound and the womb. And so she didn't get enough of that nourishment. And so now she's trying to mold to society because she thinks maybe she can get the nourishment from outside. But she's not fitting in. That's not working either. She doesn't have the relationship grip, the ability to really connect because she didn't learn it from her first few years of life.
And, of course, again, I'm trying so hard to get through. I'm trying so hard to hear you. There's so much static on the line that I can barely hear the truth. It isn't any wonder I'm the fool. Is it a surprise to be uncool? It's no wonder I'm so disconnected. It's no wonder. So that's the song Disconnected by Pink, and it's performed by Pink. And that is our show. If you want to pull up more of our shows, you can pull us at Stitcher, either on the internet or on your smartphone or iTunes, or you can actually pull former stuff at www.ubnradio.com, where we are, and you can also look us up on YouTube. We're working on a YouTube channel where you can actually see us do the show and hear us too. And I'm Walt Lusk, your host. You've been listening to Dr. Judy Rosenberg on Dr. Judy WTF, which, of course, is What the Freud. And we're now going to be hearing Pink by Disconnected. And actually, folks, we just completed our first for real session here. We're going to stay tuned for more next week. So take care until.